differently. And that's going to save a lot of gasoline too. So when someone tells me, and someone who's absolutely 100% self-interested, tells me it's impossible to do something when we're probably, based on what's on the books, somewhere about 80% of the way there, I don't believe it. Because I think over 15 years, Californians are going to come up with ways that are going to be surprising. And we're going to come up with ideas that are going to be better than anyone has thought of at this point. I mean, I always say to people, look, in 1983, they broke up Ma Bell. In 1996, they deregulated communication. In 1983, my parents had a rotary phone and a black and white TV. No one had ever heard of the internet. All the things that have happened subsequently they weren't in anyone's imagination. So the ability of us to innovate is so much more than anyone gives us credit for. As a country, as a state, as a people. So when someone tells me we can't do it and we're already 80% of the way there, based on what's on the books, I say, I don't believe that for a second. And I also think this is a question of we have to give ourselves these bogeys. It's not a question of like, this would be a nice thing to do. These are things that, as a state, we actually have to do. And if we can do it, and if we can lead the way, that is going to be great for us. And so if we set ourselves a target that's 20% above what's already on the books, I think that's completely logical. And I think if we challenge ourselves, we'll surprise ourselves with our capabilities, we'll surprise ourselves with our innovation, and at the end of it, we'll look back and think, wasn't that fantastic?
So just for everybody that doesn't follow totally what's happening at the state level, these are the governor's goals that he set at the beginning of the year, and these two bills are to implement the governor's goals. SB 32 happens to be carried by our local senator, Farron Pavley, and she has two of her staffers here, Marie and Henry Stern. And Henry has written a lot of SB 32. So anybody that has questions on that, go after Henry after. Raise your hand, Henry. And I have just one last question before we get questions from the audience. What do you see as the biggest challenge to overcome in order to address climate change at the state, federal, and international level?
Well, one of the things that I definitely didn't understand at the onset of this effort for me, which has been going on for about 10 years, was the difference between policy and politics. Because I thought that the way things were accomplished was basically that people thought through what the best idea was, and they had kind of an intellectual conversation, and there was a Socratic dialogue, and at the end of it, you had a great answer. And it turns out, who knew? There's a huge political process. And the political process includes a lot of organization and a lot of interest. And so, and with that interest comes money. So when I think about what the pushback to everything I've been saying today is, it's the fact that there are big interests that don't think these are good ideas. And there's a lot of money that doesn't think these are good ideas. And so I gave you the polling data, where basically overwhelmingly Americans agree with us and increasingly agree with us and think it's increasingly important. But in terms of getting that enacted into legislation at any level, it's really important to understand that there is what I think of as paid opposition. There are people whose interests are, whose oxes are gored, whose interests are damaged. And they're going to, democratic processes, they absolutely have a right to give an alternative point of view, to argue strongly, and to spend money against it. And when we think about this, if this were a polite college debate, we would have settled this a long time ago. But because it is actually a fractious democracy with a lot of separate interests, it's going to take organization, it's going to take continual attention, and that's why actually I stopped working as an investor, at all, because I feel as if it's important for us as a society, and I view this honestly as our generational challenge, and I think that everybody is gonna end up, and I've always thought this, in California and across the country, feeling as if we can solve this problem. This is our problem, but it's also our opportunity to make a big contribution, and we can all feel what other generations have felt when they solved their biggest problems.